Shalom, everyone, from Interfaithfulness, where we're building bridges, where history builds walls. And today I want to look at this subject over here that you see. Is your gospel too small? As a matter of fact, I want to do a whole series on that whole issue. Is your gospel too small? This is a real troublemaking issue. This is one we're going to get to some controversy, but controversy is good. So let me share with you a couple of things to introduce this series, and we're going to follow up on it this week. First, I want to show you, I was accused of being a heretic in a Messianic Jewish newspaper some years ago. I'm laughing now, but it still hurts. Someone wrote a long letter denouncing me. Here's part of his denunciation. I thought you'd enjoy seeing me denounce, so here it is. The fellow opened up by saying, "What is the good news? It is the simple message that the seed of the woman, the long-expected Redeemer, the one who was truly called Emmanuel, who is fully God and fully man, came to save mankind, which is dead in trespasses and sins. By means of his incarnation, sinless life, death, burial, and resurrection, he has made salvation possible for Jews and Gentiles who hear this good news and believe it. This is the simple gospel. Every one of our children should know this before they become a bar mitzvah. When a rabbi, talking about me, when a rabbi no longer is able to articulate this, but instead minimizes it, confuses it, undermines it, or adds to it, something is seriously wrong." And this fellow was saying that something was seriously wrong with me. And that's an important issue. Is that what the gospel is? The message of Yeshua, fully God, fully man, came to earth, gave himself for our sins. Jews and Gentiles, by believing in him, can be saved, period. That's the gospel. The guy said, because I didn't say that that's all the gospel is, I was a heretic. Let me show you what else he says. I've got your interest now. You love hearing about me as a heretic. But here's a little more of what he said. He said, Stewart refuses to give a clear, simple definition of the good news. In fact, he advises us against having a simple definition of the gospel. He claims that most of us are confused about the gospel, particularly the evangelical church and Jewish missions. Quote, he's quoting from a paper I gave, "Conditioned by evangelicalism and post-enlightenment conceits, we may at first think that defining the gospel is a straightforward manner and simple, really." I said, I advise against this. The gospel should not and cannot really be defined in the same manner as other terms. In other words, I think the gospel is so extensive, so extraordinary, you can't put it on a bumper sticker. That's where our difference is. He says bumper sticker yes, I say bumper sticker no. And then he goes on talking about me. He says, in fact, he, that is Stewart, me, claims that, quote, it is and always will be more than we can grasp and define. When describing the gospel, he says, it is, quote, this is me, fundamentally a report. I get that from Isaiah 53, who has believed our report. It is fundamentally a report we have received and which we pass on, an authoritative, empowered, but always fragmentary report concerning God's saving interventions in Jesus Christ. And because I said this, he said I was a heretic, and it was a big hullabaloo. I'll tell you, I went into a Messianic synagogue about 10 years ago, and at this time I was still at Ahavat Zion. No, it was about 7 years ago. It was after I stepped down as the rabbi at Ahavat Zion, and I was visiting this Messianic synagogue in Orange County. And when I came to the door, somebody gave me a bulletin, and I was going to go to the service. And she said, "Oh, where do you normally attend?" I said, "I go to Ahavat Zion in Beverly Hills." She said, "Oh, is that the synagogue where the rabbi doesn't believe in Jesus anymore?" That's me. So you got to know, folks, that I've been soundly denounced, and I want to, in this series, I want to examine, is your gospel too small or is my gospel too big? Let me just give you one more quote, and then I'll let you go to dinner. Try this one. In a book by Scott McKnight, which I've been reading, which some things I deeply agree with, and there are some things where he's really wrong. And I'm going to show you where I feel he's really wrong. But in writing in the introduction of the book, N.T. Wright, who was one of the most influential and respectable New Testament theologians in the world, he talks about this book, and he says this, quote, "The large thesis that is advanced here, and parallel with other similar cases that some of us are trying to make, is that the movement that has long called itself evangelical is in fact better labeled soterian, from the word soteria in Greek, which means salvation." In other words, he's saying that, he goes on and says this, "We have thought we were talking about the gospel," that is the evangel. "We thought we were talking about the gospel, when in fact we were concentrating on salvation." So what's his point? His point is that the gospel is bigger than simply the message of our salvation. I'll give you a hint of where I'm going this week. The gospel, I had to disappoint you, but the gospel is not all about you. It's not about how you get saved, how I get saved, how the other guy gets saved. The gospel is much bigger than that. I think your gospel is too small. And now that I've given you a troublemaking message, I'm going to go away, and I'll see you later this week here at Interfaithfulness, where we're building bridges, where history builds walls, and sometimes we make trouble for people who don't like to think the way we do. So I'll see you later in the week. I hope you enjoy this, and I hope to see you soon. Shalom.